All right, welcome everybody. Dr. Eisenbrock, Dr. Ace, Dr. Hall, welcome everybody. First we're going to start off with a topic that Dr. Peterson wanted to bring up. So he's going to kind of introduce it. It pertains to marketing and kind of all the things that we've seen over the last, I guess, about last year, maybe a little less. But Dr. Peterson, why don't you frame what you're seeing and what the concerns you have,
Okay, thanks, Wes.
Yep.
The, it seems it's taken us 5 years or more to really find what kind of marketing works in the dental office. And it's really come down a lot to Google pay-per-click and picking your AdWords and refining them and going over what works, what doesn't, the kind of patients they get you. And it's gotten to be very scientific and dependable. Most of my clients spend, well, varying amounts of money, uh, but they know how many patients on average they're going to uh, be able to convert out of that. They know how many phone calls they're going to get. They know how well their staff is trained for handling those calls on the phone, getting high conversion levels, getting them into the office. And, it now it kind of falls into that too good to be true category because as of, I believe, starting last fall, but really almost going full way that by February this year, Google has changed their algorithms once again, and they're now doing something called Google Local Marketing, which has taken all the predictability out of AdWords, pay-per-click. And what my clients have been telling me is they're paying more and getting less. More phone
Uh,
calls, but mostly people who are totally unqualified, just bad, non-productive calls. Let's call it what they
oh
call
yeah, what I'm seeing from my clients is calls from different states, calls for veterinary offices. They think they're calling a veterinary office, just weird, bizarre phone calls. And this all started around August last year. Google introduced their own AI to kind of pre-set up an AdWord campaign for any office, right? And so even though you use a marketing company, Google kind of handled it with their AI, and it was horrible. I mean, when I say horrible, the results were unpredictable, like Dr. Peterson was saying, where before we were really good at refining those keywords, the marketing company, and we would work on it too, where it was very predictable. It's $150, a new patient through the door, 170, 120, and you could pretty much set your watch to it month by month. And they introduced this AI, and I have my theories on why they did this. I think maybe to try to cut out the middleman, to make it easy for the company to do it, or maybe it is to get more clicks, to generate more revenue and rip people off, because that's certainly what has happened. It's literally for a lot of my offices, it's literally doubled. Some offices tripled the cost for lead to the office, and the lead, because we can't fine tune the keywords as we once were able to, um, the leads aren't as good. And we've been dealing with this for a year, almost a year, and it's been horrible. And last week, Google decided to roll back the clock and go back to the old way. Uh, so uh, So there'll be some changes coming up, and you'll definitely want to get with your marketing company and make sure if you're doing AdWords keywords, you want to stay on top of it and really hone in uh, and work with them, because it's like starting over again with a new marketing company where you have to hone the keywords. Where before, the only thing you could do is do negative keywords. That was the only thing you're allowed to do. And some of our offices with our marketing company, they had like 2,000 negative keywords. It was insane what was going on with Google. So I'm happy that they finally rolled it back. It's been a disaster. I've had a number of clients and when I say number 6 or 7, where it's just can't even market. I mean, where once they could, and they had to drop it. They had to kill the marketing. So it's important that you guys know these details, obviously, and that it has changed back. So marketing might be more predictable going forward. But of course, you want to get with your marketing company and talk through it. Okay, so that's what I've seen. Now, other things with marketing that we've talked about in the past, nothing else has really worked. Right now, I have not seen anything consistent across the board work countrywide. That means Facebook, any social media stuff, Instagram, whatever. None of that stuff has really panned out. Uh, and yeah, postcards. I have some people do some postcards still, and those do okay, but they're not great. In some areas, it doesn't hardly work at all. So right now, it's still just Google. And it's Google, either you got to be top on the search, so SEO's got to be great, or you got to pay per click. The other caveat is your Google star ratings. You need to be at the top in your area. So when you pull up the map, so if you pull up on your iPhone, uh, Google Maps, and you type in dentist and you're around your office, you want to be the top third on that page. You want to be right on that page, show up real quick, one, two, or three. But you also have to have the most reviews in the area. So if you're at 200, but you've got somebody at 500, you're going to lose leads. So you're gonna have to really work on getting your the quantity of stars up there. Okay. And then there's you can't be below a 4.6. You gotta be 4.7 or higher. Okay. So those are kind of the rules with Google. That's how it works. And hopefully there's some predictability set back into how Google operates. So I got my fingers crossed because that has really set back a lot of practices. So that's marketing. That's kind of what I know about it. So I will keep you guys informed if there's any changes, and if I do see more predictability and it starts working, I'll let you guys know. All right. So I'm going to talk about an experience I had going to an office, and so I spent 2 days in an office. They called me out and they wanted me to come there because the morale had sunk. And really, it was the front versus the back. Everybody's dealt with this at some point or another in their career, the front office versus the back office. And he just kind of said, just come out. I'd been talking to them and I couldn't figure it out. And it normally, because I've done this a long time, when I go to an office, within about 2 hours, I have 90% of the story figured out. Maybe 2.5 hours, certainly before lunch. 90% of the story's figured out. Well, this office, it really didn't, I couldn't figure it out until the second day at around 10 o'clock in that morning, what actually was going on and why and what was causing it. And it really all boiled down to two things. And this is really interesting. One problem is there was too many cooks in the kitchen. So what we had communication from front and back. When people would get upset, if you got four people at the front, Susie, Mary, Jane, and Jill, any one of them would go to the back and complain and say, hey, you didn't do this right. You didn't document this right. And so they were getting all this feedback from multiple different people all the different time. And then vice versa, the same problem. And so it was mass confusion and a lot of these people have no tact, meaning, and so it would get very confrontational at times, make people very angry. And so you had this problem of too many people trying to correct other people and mistakes. Okay. The other problem was simply a handoff, a good handoff to the front desk. For whatever reason, they got so bitter with each other that they wouldn't talk to each other, and they would just bring somebody to the front desk, that needed a treatment plan put together, and they would just hand them the chart and just leave. So there was no good handoff, no good communication. So with that, the front desk is, what's going on with this patient? What's do I need to schedule them back? And so there's all these little connecting questions that they had to have, and it just led to frustration and anger. So obviously, you guys have all know that a good handoff is paramount, right? So those were the two things that were driving this and absolutely mad. But first, I had to go listen to everybody complain about everybody else. In other words, as I'm listening, because Susie, that that Angie at the front desk, and boom, 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 she does this, that, and this, and then I'd hear another person, she'd be complaining about a different front desk person, and then a front desk person would be complaining about a different back office. And I would just be listening to it, going, "What in the world is going on?" And that's what it all boiled down to. So number one solution is only one person can talk to the back, and only one person from the back can talk to the front about corrective coaching of things that the front and back is doing wrong. And that comes down to usually leadership, right? So normally when we go into an office, first thing we want to do is establish who's the front desk lead, who's the back office lead. And because they didn't have that set up, it it literally created this nightmare scenario where they literally hated each other. So, leadership, okay? And then, of course, handoffs. That's a little bit more simple, and most of you guys would know that. But those two things led to these big problems. And so that kind of leads me into the next part of the thing I want to talk about today is about leadership bonuses and how they work and how you should put them together and little things that you want to add in because you guys have all heard of our leadership, a lot of you have, our leadership bonus. So this is how it works. Okay. First, what you do is you set a goal up. And usually the goal is going to be about 10 to 15, maybe 20% above where the practice is right now. So you kind of average out where the practice is at. And let's say the practice is doing 200,000 a month for, let's say 100,000 a month, sake of math. Okay, 100,000 a month. What you'd do is you'd say, okay, I'm going to put these leaders in place and I'm going to give you a target. It's going to be 115,000. If you hit that target, I will share with you a bonus, right? And the normal Whitehall bonus was for the office manager, the CA, or the clinic administrator, they'd get a 0.5% or 1% of the entire collections. So if they got 1%, it would be $1,500 for that month. Okay. If you decided to go with a 0.5%, obviously it would be 750. Now you're going to ask, well, which is it, Wes? Which one should I do? Should it be a 0.5% or should it be a full percent? A couple things you got to consider. One is how profitable are you already? So if you're low on profitability, you'd want to go lower on that percentage, meaning if the numbers are tight. If you've got a lot of associates, and you're trying to really do the AWOL practice like we talk about, then you're going to want to drop near that 0.5%. And it might be 0.5, 0.7, it might be 0.6, might be 0.75. So somewhere in that range it should fall. The other thing to keep in mind is it needs to be larger the smaller the office. So if you're doing 100,000 a month, I would probably recommend being closer to that 1% than a 0.5% because motivation matters. And you can have a sunset on it, meaning that as we crawl to 200,000, anything past that, it's a 0.5%. Okay. It's very important you know those little things that you can do to protect yourself. Okay, so you can have a little sunset to it because you know that that extra 100,000 is going to be produced by an associate. Anything past that, there's going to be less profit, and you have a little sunset to it. Okay. With your divisional leaders, typically we start with a clinical lead and a front desk lead. Unless the office is huge with a lot of hygienists, we typically don't go with a hygiene lead. Okay, we use the clinical lead to service both. But that being said, there are some offices that you'll need all three: front desk lead, clinical lead, and hygiene lead. And with them, we kind of do half a share. So they're either going to get 0.25 to 0.5 of a percent of the practice. And again, you use those same rules, right? Motivation matters, and don't kid yourself. So you gotta get them motivated. Okay. The other thing you can do as a caveat, and especially as you move really towards an associate-driven practice, is what you want them to do is start paying attention to the profitability of the practice. And so what we'll do is we'll split the bonus in half. So you take 1%, let's take the leader, and you do this with all of them. You take their bonus, you split it in half. So half of it's earned by the collection goal. So in this example, it was 115. You get half of your bonus, which would be $750 if we hit our collections goal. Then we're going to have an overhead goal. Okay. Now the overhead goal is going to be a 3-month rolling average. What's our 3-month rolling average? If we can keep our 3-month rolling average at or below where we are currently, then the other half of your bonus kicks in, which would be the other $750. What you want is them motivated like you're motivated. You want them thinking very similar to an owner, and crafting these bonuses, you can pretty much get them thinking in that way. Now the only difference would be is they don't have to pony up out of their pocket when the month is short. So they're not going to think entirely like you, and I get that. But you'll get them thinking collections, you'll get them thinking watching overhead. And that combination has been great setting that up. Now, typically, we don't set that up until we're really running an associate practice where we've got a couple doctors there. But you can do this right now. It doesn't matter. You can set this up right now. But you want them thinking about overhead. Okay. And with that, they typically will keep it 1 or 2% below that, just so that they don't get caught without their bonus. Okay. So bonus is very, very powerful, very powerful. So that's how we set up our leadership bonuses. I've seen others, uh, but I think that this is probably the best one. And I've seen many of them. Dr. Peterson, you seen any that you like, or is this pretty much standard?
Yeah, I think the key comment though is that really works best in a larger office where there's multiple doctors.
Yeah, right. When you set the one up that I was talking about where it's based on profitability, you kind of shift that once you have multiple doctors. And we'll do it where they're on the old Whitehall bonus, and we'll say, okay, we got multiple doctors now. We got to pay attention to overhead, and we'll just cut it in half and split it up. And it works. And all of a sudden, they're paying attention to overhead. So, so that's bonuses. Okay. Any questions on bonuses before I move on leadership bonus? Because I'm talk about a motivation through bonus, okay? Because that's kind of the topic. So I had an office where we have a bunch of hygiene assistants, right? So they're running accelerated hygiene, and lots of them. And what we noticed, or what I noticed, was there's not a lot of dentistry coming out of hygiene. And it's very hard to track how much dentistry is actually coming out of hygiene. It's not so easy to figure that out. It's easy with new patients. You can just pull up the new patients last month, see how much dentistry came out of them. Uh, of course, the rest of it has to be coming out of the practice, but it could be emergency existing patients. So finding out how much was coming out of hygiene is tricky. But I had a suspicion that they weren't hitting what they should coming out of hygiene because of their setup with these hygiene assistants. The hygienist was rolling between two rooms. And so you've got somebody that's experienced in dental knowledge, that has a little confidence to talk about dentistry, really tied up, bouncing from room to room. And the only person left were these hygiene assistants. And they were green. Obviously, they're green. I mean, they don't have much experience in dentistry. So their ability to really talk about dentistry, to really even present anything, was almost embarrassing. I mean, very close to that. So, anyways, we set up a bonus, and the bonus was in 6 weeks, the assistant that schedules the most dentistry out of their chair in that 6 weeks gets a trip to the Bahamas for two days, which costs about $1,000, something like maybe 1,200. So we set this up. We tracked how much dentistry was coming out of the chairs just before this, and it was um, maybe like 5,000 a week, maybe a little less. Some chairs it was 2,000 a week. So say somebody that was really pretty good was closer to five, so 4 to 5, and the weaker ones it was like two. Uh, we set this up. The winner booked $70,000 out of his chair over 6 weeks. The second runner up, it was like 59,000. Then after that, it was 30,000 and then 20 and then like 15. And, the drop off was staggering, right? As you got to people who weren't motivated, maybe didn't have the gift, uh, the having people, my point is having people in the chair seeing your patients that aren't good communicators of dentistry and convincing people of doing dentistry can be costing you $10,000 a week per chair. It's massive. It's massive. And so what we did is we set up a tracking system where they have to enter in every patient that they saw that day and did they schedule dentistry just that day. I mean, obviously some of these patients call back later, but did they schedule that day? And we were getting numbers coming back of around kind of a number to shoot for is around $1,500 per chair. That's how much dentistry should be booked or more per day. But there were people, like I said, it was more like almost 3,000 a day because they're running 4 days a week. And so to do 10,000 over $10,000 a week, you're starting to push uh, close to $3,000 a day. So it does matter who you've got as a hygienist or who you've got as a hygiene assistant. And getting them motivated and figuring out how to motivate them will make a huge difference. And it turned the practice around. And their numbers they had some turnover with these hygiene assistants, and certainly, over the last 6 months, it was kind of a copy of a copy of a copy, and it just degraded into mediocre, very inexperienced people, and their numbers were just tanking. And we were looking at new patients, that was good. We couldn't figure it out. That was the issue. But I can promise you, you all have this. You all have hygienists who a lot of dentistry flows out of, and then you got the other hygienist, not much comes out of it. And it can be costing you big. My estimate is probably for most of you with a mediocre hygienist, it's probably costing you 20 to 30,000 a month in lost restorative dentistry. So yeah, so bonuses matter. So set up a bonus for hygiene over 6 weeks. It could be a fun bonus. It don't have to be a trip. And have them log how much dentistry is coming out of their chairs. And even just so you know exactly who's good, who's not, and how much opportunity is left on the table. You should be getting a very good office, a good hygienist or good hygiene assistant. Like I said, it should be around 2,500 a day. That's a very good one. But a minimum of $1,500 a day should be coming out of those chairs. Anything less than that, and it's opportunity cost. You guys familiar with that term? So, uh, so bonus is powerful. That's my point today. And anybody have any questions?
Wes, a couple comments.
Dr. Hall, yeah, go ahead.
The shortage of hygienists is still a big problem in most parts of the country.
Mhm.
And I actually have an office I work with the doctors afraid to even criticize or say something to the hygienists that might upset them,
Yeah.
which is just so frustrating. But a glimmer of light just popped up recently, and state of Arizona has approved a new level of dental assistant who will be able to do supragingival scaling, polishing, essentially a regular prophy, which is typically what half of your patients need, maybe even more. The details are not codified yet, so I don't know what extra training is going to be involved, but we're the first state to have
Yeah.
approved that. The governor has signed it, so it's going to happen. And I am so encouraged because
Well, if they leave us in this state for very long, I mean, we have no choice but to start looking at other options. I mean, it's really a
in the
joke, you know?
yeah, in
So,
the 80s and 90s, we faced that problem here. And the state association came up with over $1 million in donations to start a new hygiene and assisting school in conjunction with Salt River Community College. It's grown tremendously. And in fact, they've even moved it from the original building now into a much larger facility. It's one of the biggest programs they have. But in a state now that has between 7 and 8 million people, 3 hygiene programs cranking out 20 people a year isn't going to handle it. So this is, I find, terribly encouraging. And I can't wait to see what all the
yeah.
rules and educational requirements will be.
So,
More coffee.
Dr. Hall, you got a question?
A few just comments.
Okay.
With the bonus thing, it's reward what you want more of.
Right.
So all those things were exactly, yeah, we want more of that. So some changes we've made over the last year. Denise, who does all our insurance billing, she was in her own office, in her own world all day doing insurance because we have 2 associates, 3 hygienists. So she's busy. But I moved her into the room that's right next to the front desk. It's got an open door. So if she notices there's more people at the front, they're not being helped, she can help out. And then recently we did that treatment bonus if they schedule a next visit, and this all goes on a sheet of paper, they get $5. If they get the patient to stay, it's $10. So when they fill out a page, they hand it to me, and then every 2 weeks, I add it up. Denise, who used to do none of it, she gets now like a $300 bonus every 2 weeks. She's so on it. She's hilarious. She'll wave them into her room. She'll go, "Come on, I can help you." It's so funny to see the difference for that.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah. And boy, that made a nice thing we rarely get anybody now that doesn't either schedule or stay.
Yeah.
So
It
yeah,
does make a difference. And there's some people that it makes a huge they're really motivated,
she is.
And that's good to know when you've got
Yeah.
somebody like that. Yeah. So, any other comments? Okay. Yep. Uh, yeah, I definitely recommend a little bonus system set up for 6 weeks, so it doesn't have to go on forever. It could be 8 weeks for your hygiene department, and just to see and have them keep track of everything that's coming out of hygiene, just to see what kind of numbers you guys are generating in your offices. And I can tell you, like I said, just follow the number. If it's below 1,500, you're literally leaving money on the table. Something's wrong. And when you have that problem, it creates an overhead problem. Okay, so when case development is off, and case development would say, hey, $1,500 should be coming out of this chair a day, and when it's 1,000, all the overhead is still there for that office. You still need the same amount of assistants, same amount of front desk people. It doesn't mean that you need a third less people all of a sudden, or third less office. All it means is just overhead eat. And so if you feel like you've got an overhead problem, it usually means there's some kind of inefficiency in case development. And it's either there's only three spots it can be: new patient case development, hygiene case development, and then of course existing patient emergencies, people calling in with toothaches and things, which that typically is not going to be the problem. It's going to be in one of the other two. And so tracking new patients is something you guys have all done, but most people don't track what's coming out of hygiene. So keep an eye on that. I would definitely try that over the next 6 weeks and see what you learn. Okay. Any other questions? Dr. Reverend? Yeah, I'll ask you to unmute. Maybe that'll be easier.
Okay, he's muted.
How about now?
There we
Okay.
go.
All right. So question with my office, of course, we have multiple hygienists and we have multiple doctors, all me plus 3 associates. When you have work you're trying to get scheduled out of hygiene to go to the front to schedule, have you noticed in these other offices that if the hygienists are motivated, do you think they want to gravitate towards one particular doctor who they think might be better at, encouraging the patient to move forward with it? Do you see any of that kind of behavior when you're trying to do this bonus?
We haven't. What we've seen is some of the hygienists or hygiene assistants wanting to see a different patient and moving patients and manipulating a little bit that way. We've seen that. But we haven't seen the doctor thing. One thing we did do in one of these offices, so it's a DSO, so there's multiple offices, is one of the offices, we had the clinic administrators just stand in the hall in the 4 operatories. This office was down by 1/3. So I mean, it was eating money. It was eating money every month. And so what we had her do is just stand out in that hall in the 4 or 5 operatories for hygiene and just buzz up and down the hall and wait for something to happen. And she would just jump in as soon as they started talking dentistry. After the doctor left, a lot of it's previously diagnosed though.
Right. Yeah.
So a lot of it's not even the doctor diagnosing anything. It's just about the hygienist or the hygiene assistant start to bring it up, and she would just jump in and say, "We got to get this taken care of. We can't let this go any longer. Insurance is going to do this." Boom. The numbers changed overnight in that, like literally that day forward, they were never below goal again.
Oh, so they actually had the True Line coordinator just standing on the hallway, just waiting for the opportunity.
So they were eating money, 50 grand a month. Last that month, they netted 90.
Wow. Wow.
That's,
All right.
that's the only change.
Okay. All right. Good to know. Thanks.
Yeah. So when I'm telling you, pay attention to hygiene and what's going on, what's coming out of it, I'm dead serious.
As I'm trying to get the point across, I got one particular hygienist who they all, patients want to have their story about how they don't have money because they have kids that are in private college and, and they have medical bills and all this other, she just basically wants to shut down any kind of conversation that we might have because, well, they have a special, unique circumstance. So thinking with this bonus, it may have them compartmentalize that so they don't use it so much to like try to
So
pick and choose.
do a juicy bonus, go out on a limb this time, you guys, and do something a little crazy, like a trip, like I said, you know what I mean? It's $1,500, and just see what happens. And that way you get clear data too on what's
Yeah.
coming out of there, you know? And what do you risk? You risk $1,500, the chances of you not picking that back up by a little motivation and picking up a crown or two is almost zero.
Do you run into any complaints about the front desk going, but hey, wait a minute, we're the ones presenting the treatment. We're the
Ye-
ones trying to, work out the financing. Get
Yeah,
that?
we ran into that. We just said, no, we're going to do this for them for 6 weeks. We might do something at the front differently
All right.
time later, but right now this is what we're doing.
All right. Fair enough.
Yeah, you kind of got to shut some of this stuff down uh, because it will paralyze you from operating.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So
Right.
if you don't shut it down, all of a sudden you go, well, I guess we just can't do that.
Yeah.
So yeah, you got to be good with being able to just say, hey, this is what we're doing right now. We'll come up with something different for the front desk, but the hygiene department, this is what we're doing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. Thanks.
All right. Any other questions? Thank you. Thank you for joining me, and we'll see you next time. Please give this a shot. I promise you it'll be worth your time and that extra money. So, okay. Thank you.
You.